For centuries, much of the human family has lived with a concept of the divine that is soaked in dread. We inherited the idea that a single mistake or a wrong belief could lead to a permanent, irreversible darkness. Historically, institutions found that this specific fear worked as a powerful lever for control. By threatening the soul with conscious, never-ending torment, they could enforce strict obedience and manage behavior across entire populations. This theological model relies on taking our own very human impulses toward vengeance and projecting them onto the cosmos. We imagine a God who is as angry, tribal, and retaliatory as we are on our worst days. This projection creates the image of the cruel judge, a model that has effectively colonized the human imagination. It has made the idea of eternal suffering seem like a necessary component of divine justice. We have to consider whether this punitive vision actually portrays a God who is morally smaller than our own human conscience. Most parents would never dream of the cruelties we attribute to the Creator. The Metatronic Church proposes that God is one, God is love, and this love is absolutely universal. This suggests that the source of all life does not have a limit on its patience or a boundary where its mercy expires. Adopting this view reframes our entire existence. Life stops looking like a high-stakes trial and begins to look like a long, patient process of healing and restoration for every soul. Critics often argue that if you remove the threat of eternal punishment, human actions no longer matter. They fear that a universally loving God makes the world's injustices and cruelties inconsequential. Universal love actually demands more accountability, not less. It brings a purifying flame to injustice, refusing to let the harm caused by one person to another remain unaddressed. Retributive punishment focuses on caging the violator and leaving the wound open. Restorative justice corrects the core of the problem. This divine judgment works like a precision surgery, forcing the oppressor to experience the suffering they caused until their cruelty is burned away. Because this process requires the transformation of the individual rather than just their isolation, it represents a more demanding and complete vision of justice than simple endless torment. Some will still point to free will, questioning whether a soul can simply choose to walk away and reject God for all eternity. True freedom requires the ability to see and act in truth. A soul trapped in hatred, addiction to darkness, or deep-seated shame is living in a state of captivity, not exercising a free choice. In this framework, evil lacks an independent substance. It exists only as the temporary absence of light. When light arrives, the darkness cannot sustain itself. The math of the infinite reveals why restoration is certain. Human resistance is a finite quantity, limited by our time and our trauma. Divine patience is an infinite, limitless quantity. When finite resistance meets an infinite restorative force, the infinite will eventually outlast the resistance. It doesn't need to use force. It simply waits until the truth becomes so clear that the lie can no longer be held. Since God's infinite love outlasts all finite rebellion, the inevitable end of the story is the healing of every creature that was ever brought into being. Stripping away the threat of eternal pain changes our basic motivation. We find ourselves following a path of goodness out of genuine gratitude for being loved, rather than out of panic. This theology carries a heavy earthly weight. If we believe that every person is a temporary expression of the divine, then our neighbor is sacred. We lose the ability to categorize any human being as disposable or trash. A belief in universal love mandates the practice of universal dignity. It becomes impossible to ignore the hungry or the oppressed today while claiming to love a God who intends to restore them tomorrow. We are called to be active healers in the present. This means setting firm boundaries and seeking justice, but doing so without the dehumanization or cruelty that fear-based systems depend on. This ultimate view of the cosmos removes the existential terror associated with the end of life. Death appears as a doorway held open by a creator whose nature is mercy. We can trust the driver of the universe, even if we don't know every turn on the road home. We are living in a universe that moves towards reconciliation. The idea of an eternal torture chamber at the edge of creation is replaced by the reality of a love that eventually gathers everything back to itself. The final movement of creation sounds like a song of return. To hear it, we must first begin the work of cleansing the cruelty from our own hearts and our own doctrines.